Hello Bio 2. We are starting chapter 30 today, and the title of this chapter is the chordates. So we all saw this on our cladograms that we looked at. We saw this word, and so now we're going to figure out what in the heck a chordate actually is. So maybe to this point you can realize we finished the invertebrate animals, so you can figure out maybe what a chordate is. So we're going to look at what are all the characteristics that every single chordate share. So members of this phylum, the phylum name is Chordata, so therefore they called chordates. And so chordate is an animal that has, for at least some stage of its life, so they don't always have all of these, but at some point in their life they have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, so that's the step one, and that's what we kind of like to refer to maybe as our backbone, but in some of them it's just a hollow nerve cord, and what's called a notochord. They have what are called pharyngeal pouches, and a tail that extends beyond the anus. So at some point in their life cycle, they have all four of these characteristics. That doesn't mean they always have them, but at some point in their development, they do have these. And then here is just again kind of what broken down what they all look like. We have a tail, the anus, the pharyngeal pouches, the mouth, nerve cord, the notochord, and different muscle segments. So we're going to talk about each one of those more in specific. So our first notochord is just a long supporting rod that runs through the body just below the nerve cord. So that's what the notochord is. Once again, long rod, supporting rod that runs the body just below the nerve cord. And then pharyngeal pouches, these are paired structures in the throat and the pharynx region. So again, at some point all chordates have one of these. Again, part looks like almost could be part of their digestive system right now in this early development. And then the tail can contain bone and muscle, and it can be used for swimming by many aquatic species. So humans actually are chordates, so at some point in your development you had a tail, but in humans, over the course of when they develop, when you're an embryo, it eventually goes away, but at some stage you do actually have a tail. So most chordates are vertebrates, so we might kind of get the confusion. It's kind of just widely accepted that all chordates are vertebrates. However, that's not the case, because about 96% of all chordate species are vertebrates, and we all know that a vertebrate has a vertebral column or backbone, and invertebrates, the dorsal hollow nerve cord is called the spinal cord. So this big blue structure, again, running across the top when it's in an actual vertebrate animal, which again, about 96% of the vertebrates, or 96% of the chordates are vertebrates, that becomes the spinal cord. Oh, sorry, jumped ahead a little bit there. And as a vertebrate embryo develops, the front end of the spinal cord will grow into a brain, so that's kind of the cephalization there. And then the backbone is made of individual segments called vertebrae, so each one of your backbone is made up of a vertebrae. And in addition to support, vertebrae enclose and protect the spinal cord as well. So your vertebrae serve a big function to protect that spinal cord. And so here is what are kind of our evolution of the different vertebrate groups that we're going to talk about. So first off, we're going to talk about there's actually some non-vertebrate chordates, kind of some interesting ancient creatures. They'll move to the jawless fish, sharks and their relatives, or bony fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and then finally mammals will be all the animals that we'll take a look at this semester. So first off, we're going to kind of just get the two weird ones out of the way, the two groups of non-vertebrate chordates. And the two groups of non-vertebrate chordates are called tunicates and lancelets. So the reason why they are grouped as chordates because their similarities in their anatomy and embryological development indicate that vertebrates and the non-vertebrate chordates evolved from a common ancestor. So they early on development is so similar that they had to have a common ancestor. However, just once they get into adults, they really don't look as much like it. But both of them are soft-bodied marine organisms, so meaning that they live in the ocean. So our first one, a tunicate, and the reason why this one is classified as a chordate is because the larval form has all of the chordate characteristics. So it has the pharynx, the pharyngeal gills, that has the nerve cord, it has a tail, it has a notochord, it has all the requirements of a chordate. And however, the adult filter-feeding tunicates, they do not have a notochord nor a tail, so they lose those features over time. So that's what a tunicate is. So they are, again, just because from their early development, they look very similar to our chordates. And then lancelets, they look more similar kind of as a stepping stone to our vertebrates because they look like a small fish-like creature, and that's going to be our first group that we talk about are the fish, and they live on the bottom of the ocean, and they have a definite head region that contains a mouth, and how they eat is water passes through their pharynx, and then a sticky mucus will catch food particles, so they don't really eat too complexly, they just kind of go across the bottom and filter feed. And then the pharynx will use, or the lancelets, sorry, will use their pharynx for gas exchange, so that's how they breathe, again, taking in the water, taking the oxygen out, and eliminating the CO2. And then they're thin enough to exchange gases through their body surface, so again, through the process of diffusion. And they also have a closed circulatory system, and they do not have a true heart. So that's it for our introduction to our chordates. We'll get more in-depth with our actual groups in our next video, so let me know if you have any questions.